Thank you for joining us this evening. This is Russell Roots, Community Outreach Manager with Utah Film Center, and I'm here with Zeinabu Davis. We're going to be discussing the film Compensation this evening, which you just watched, which is a wonderful, wonderful piece. Zeinabu Irene Davis is an independent filmmaker and professor of communication at the University of California, San Diego. She is comfortable working in narrative, experimental, and documentary genres. Her work is passionately concerned with the depiction of women of African descent, and her dramatic feature Compensation features two interrelated love stories that offer a view of Black deaf culture. The film was selected for the dramatic competition at the 2000 Sundance Film Festival and was the winner of the Gordon Parks Award for directing from the Independent Feature Project in 1999. Her most recent work, Spirits of Rebellion Black Cinema, is also a film we featured last year during Black History Month. Ms. Davis has received numerous grants and fellowships from such sources as the National Black Programming Consortium, the Rockefeller Foundation, the American Film Institute, and the National Endowment for the Arts. I'd like to welcome Zeinabu Davis. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Russell. Happy to be here again with you all.
Absolutely. Thank you. So let's dive right in. Compensation portrays Black love in the Black community across two different periods of time. What was your motivation to tell the story along these two timelines?
Well, I think the first thing you should know about Compensation was that it was inspired by the poetry of Paul Laurence Dunbar, who lived in Dayton, Ohio, which was very close to where I started my university teaching career at Antioch College in Yellow Springs, Ohio. And when you go visit Dunbar's home, which is still standing, the plaque that's outside of the home is the poem Compensation. And when we read that poem, Mark Cherry, who's a screenwriter, and myself, we just kind of like, whoa, and knew that we had to do something with that particular poem. And so the idea of telling two different love stories, one at the beginning of the 20th century and one at the end of the 20th century, that was really kind of like the impetus. And I also happened to be doing another short film in Yellow Springs at that time called A Powerful Thang. And I work, as many of the LA Rebellion filmmakers do, I work with people who portray themselves. They might be what we call social actors, not professional actors with theatrical degrees, etc., but people who basically play themselves. And Asma Faye Jimmy, who plays Yasmin Allen in A Powerful Thing, was a dancer. And in order to keep Asma in character, while a lot of filmmaking is about hurry up and wait, I had her journal in a diary what Yasmin's thoughts were. So I gave her the poem Compensation. And as a dancer, she had lost a number of her friends in the New York community to HIV/AIDS. And so she responded based on that. And then Dunbar himself passed away 115 years ago on February 9th, 1906, from complications due to tuberculosis. So that just kind of like hit us. And it was like, okay, wow, here we have a story about a pandemic, by the way, that deals with pandemic of the earlier 20th century. And then here we have another story that deals with the pandemic at the end of the 20th century, HIV/AIDS. So that's how those two kind of got melded together to become one story.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful. And yeah, the subject matter in the film, deafness and disability, HIV/AIDS, and the LGBTQ issues was very heady for that period of time. And I mean, I think you spoke very eloquently to your motivations to putting it in the film, working with other members of the community, people who have lost dear ones, loved ones. I think that's a really interesting way to address, again, what we would call ambiguous loss today for yet a different pandemic of that time. So really, really interesting. I really enjoyed the nuance of the conflict between the deaf and the hearing community you presented in the film. It presented a novel approach to discrimination in a Black story that didn't revolve around race, gender, or colorism. How did you arrive at that narrative element?
I think it was really, again, going back to my folks, my community, um, LA Rebellion filmmakers, we've always been inspired to make films that are about, quotidian things, the everyday stuff that happens with Black folks. And you don't have to necessarily scream about racism, sexism, or whatever else is going on. It's just basically show stories of people who look like you or that you know from your communities. And so that was really like something that was important to us. And it's, also as a filmmaker at that time in the 90s, the leading killer of Black women in Chicago in the 1990s was actually HIV AIDS. And nobody really knew about it or talked about it. People knew about it, but they didn't talk about it. And so sometimes what is a thing that's beautiful about film is that you can talk about things that, are taboo or that they're not necessarily always on the surface. And so that was an important thing to bring out in the story. And the inclusion of Michelle Banks as the lead character, Melindy, was a beautiful accident. We had, my husband and I had gone to St. Paul, Minnesota, and I was on a panel for a entity that gives independent filmmakers monies called ITVS, Independent Television Service.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And I was tired of reading grant applications, and we opened up the free newspaper, and there was a photograph of Michelle in the theater section, and she was in a production of Waiting for Godot at the Northern Sign Theater. And I was like, I never seen a Black woman who's deaf as an actor before. So it was like, we made it our business to make sure we went down to the theater to see her. And afterwards, I ain't ashamed to say it, I played stalker and waited till she came out and from the backstage door to see if she might be interested in possibly being in this film. And she said yes, thankfully. And so we went back to Chicago, and basically Mark and I did a whole bunch of research to just like revamp the story so that it would be more reflective of deaf community. So it took sign language classes, American Sign Language classes, connected with folks who were in the Black Deaf Advocates community, had Michelle and other people, Christopher Smith, who's in the cast, read the script ahead of time and give us contributions to things that they thought that we should make sure that we included in the story. And so that's, it's really about the kind of filmmaking I do is about a community coming together and telling and sharing a story that is relatable to them.
Absolutely. And that very much comes through in the film, which was very surprising to me. I really enjoyed it. It was quite refreshing. Staying on the topic of deafness and disability, my own research shows that shockingly few films have addressed disability in the Black community since yours was released, which makes you quite the trailblazer. Have you had any positive experiences with the disabled community, particularly those that are Black, since the film's release?
Yes, I've been really grateful that the community has responded to the film very strongly. And it's been, it's amazing to me that something that I made, 20 years ago is still having relevance today. So in fact, like Michelle was a part of this Deaf Arts Festival that was at the Kennedy Center last year in the fall, and they showed compensation. So it just shows that there's this enduring aspect of the film. So, and then when we made the film, when Compensation was released in 2000, there were very few deaf film festivals, and now there's a number of deaf film festivals, which is wonderful. So we've played at the Seattle Deaf Film Festival, played at a film festival called 1904 Deaf Arts Festival in St. Louis, Missouri. And I continue to make ties with deaf actors and deaf performers when I can and when it's possible. And in fact, I am working on a new film where Michelle would play one of the leading characters. Well, actually, she may play all three, which are Sojourner Truth and Phyllis Wheatley, the poet, Sojourner Truth, the great orator, and then a woman from Montreal by the name of Marie-Joseph Angelique. And the film is tentatively titled Stars of the Northern Sky. So I'm continue to work with people who've supported me as years have gone on. And I continue to support them as much as possible. Both Christopher Smith and Michelle Banks are still working artists. Michelle has her own company that she runs called Voca in DC. She now lives in Washington, DC. And Christopher Smith still performs. He's done this wonderful show where he portrays all of these Black women film stars, Lena Horne and Josephine Baker, all these people who like inspired him to be a performer. So, you know, we're here, we're still doing what we can to get people to kind of interact with us as audiences. And I look forward to the time again where we can bring like deaf and hearing people together in the same room so that we can share and discuss different things with folks. That was my favorite part of Compensation, is actually being able to share it with different audiences.
Thank you, thank you. I mean, that sounds wonderful, and I'm looking forward to seeing the additional project with Michelle. Love to hear that you're working with her again. I think one of the things that you know, as I listen to you speak, a question kind of popped into my head, and it's around the multiple roles for Michelle again, as with Compensation. You know, can you speak a little bit about why you two seem to have that magic around working with multiple roles in the same film together?
Oh, I didn't think about that until you just said that, Russell. That's funny. Wow. Huh. Yeah, well, I think there's so many stories that need to be told. So it's like, man, when we get the money and the resources to be able to do one, we're going to put as many people, as many experiences in here as we can as possible. I think that's the real deal behind it. And then, you know, there's something about it was magical. I was able to work with Michelle in 2019 to start to shoot the short preliminary pieces for the new film. And I was like nervous because it's like, it's been a while since I actually had the opportunity to direct her. And it was like, whoo, the performance that she was able to do with very minimal rehearsal was just so powerful and overwhelming. It was like all those years that we hadn't been able to do anything just fell apart. And it was like I was back, you know, just directing her in the 90s again. So when you have a strong connection with the actor and you trust and you respect what they bring to the art, you know, I think it's really easy for that to happen. I've never been a director where it's like, you know, you must do what I tell you to do and you can't stray from anything, like, you know, from anything that's on the page or the book, whatever. And I'm like, no, that's not me. I'm more of a collaborator. I want people to bring whatever it is that they have to the table. And it might be stuff that I hadn't thought about before, just like you just said, we doing multiple roles. I never thought about that before. So it's like, hey, that's cool. Come on, let's bring it, So that's important.
Right on, right on. I love the imagination.
Exactly. Exactly.
You
Exactly.
know, you're talking about, again, that period of time where you haven't worked with Michelle, and now you're kind of picking that thread back up again. So I mean, it's been 20 years since Compensation was released at Sundance. Do you have any additional thoughts just looking back on the film?
Yeah, I mean, I think again, I'm grateful that conversation is evergreen. I would like people to know that we're actually in negotiation with the Criterion Collection right now for the film to be restored. And it will be available on the Criterion Collection, hopefully by 2024, if not maybe a little bit sooner. When part of the restoration work is I shot the film in 16 millimeter because that's what I could afford at the time, but I spent months working on the soundtrack because I wanted to make sure that the sound experience was somewhat reflective of Michelle and Christopher's experiences with sound. Unfortunately, us as hearing people, we're kind of ignorant. We think, oh, deaf people's world is like totally quiet, which it's not. They have, depending on what degree of deafness they have, they do have perceptions of sound. And so I wanted to try to capture that. But when you put it on a mono track on 16 millimeter, you're not getting the full experience. So I'm looking forward to actually working with the engineers at Criterion and really kind of play with that whole Dolby 5.1 sound experience for the film. So I'm grateful. We did not get theatrical distribution, even though we were at Sundance in 2000. But hopefully we're also in negotiations so that there will be a theatrical release and run for the film once the restoration is complete. So I'm looking forward to that as well. And I think it's important for us as audiences to continue to honor and make sure that we support diverse voices in cinema. It's not lost on me that it's 2022 and we have the first deaf actor, Troy Kotsur, who's been nominated for an Academy Award for his role in the film Coda. And and Coda was a film that was launched at Sundance in 2021. So it's like, hey, come on, people, we need to we need all these different types of voices and images and representations of different types of people in our cinema. So I'm hoping we'll continue to see even more of that in the future. And I look forward to being a part of the community that helps to bring that forward. Yeah.
Wonderful. And congratulations. That's
Thank
amazing. and to the folks out there watching it, you heard it here first.
Yay.
As we move towards the end of our discussion today, is there anything else you would like to share? Just any other thoughts about filmmaking, deafness, or anything else you feel we might need to just kind of make sure the audience is aware of?
No, just to, make sure that you support other filmmakers, particularly deaf filmmakers. There's a wonderful filmmaker who was on the crew of Compensation by the name of Jade Bryan, Bryan. And I know that she's working on a series for a streamer right now. I don't know when it's going to be released, but anytime that you can support independent filmmakers, no matter who they are, please do your best to do so. And places like the Utah Film Center are places where you can do that. So we appreciate the support. And, we really do need you all to continue to be here to watch these types of films and to spread the word to others in whatever way, shape, or form you can. Because we just don't have the resources that some other institutions might have. But it's important that you support the institutions that are willing to like take chances and actually screen works like these. So thank you for that support.
No problem. It's our pleasure. And we that's what we're here. That's what we were founded upon, and we're looking forward to a long, healthy history of continuing to do that. So I'd like to move the conversation towards the end here. Thank you, Zeinabu. I'd like to say to the audience, be sure to join us next Tuesday for The Sound of Identity, the next selection for Women's History Month, and join Black, Bold, and Brilliant again on Tuesday, April 19th for the film Follow the Drinking Gourd about the Black food justice movement, which will be followed by a conversation with local farmers of color. Have a good night.
Thank you.